I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with a 3-minute cattle market update for Wednesday, November the 2nd, brought to you in part by the International Brangus Breeders Association. Would you like more pounds of cattle at market time? Brangus influenced cattle have proven to have more pounds at weaning without compromising udder quality on your replacement females. The IBBA encourages you to go Brangus. For more information or to find a breeder near you, visit gobrangus.com. Short memories is all we can say about this feeder cattle market. Of course, the fat cattle market's coming up too, but feeders are really jumping out there and getting wild here, of course, at lower levels. But we'll talk about all those changes. Look at the board here, your live cattle futures. December contract, Monday was down $1.02. Tuesday was up $2.20 to end the day on Tuesday at 105.52. Feeder cattle, let's look at January now. That's where most of the action is. Monday was steady. Tuesday was up 442, almost the daily limit there before they go to expanded limits to end the day on Tuesday at 120.42. Your November spot market on the feeders is 126.17, and remember that's based on an 800-pound feeder steer and not a 750-pound steer. But you look at your weighted averages on last week's fat cattle market, 127,800 head in your 5 areas, because remember we had that kind of early week there that was a touch higher and then come in Friday a bunch higher and with a normal trade. But your weighted averages on your live steers was 104.15 in the 5 areas. That's up 491. Dress steers average 163.62, which is up 647. Everything's looking real positive. Box beef cutout values, we're finally starting to get firm, and then they're showing some strength here late in the fall. With the highest volume of last week was the highest volume they've had for a week on box beef sales in 2016. Your slaughter continues to be strong. Looks like we've got another strong slaughter, well over 600,000 for the week. And we're near 1.2 million more cattle slaughtered year to date. But you look at these markets and they're starting to jump up here in big bunches, and we normally see that on our feeder cattle, not so much your fat cattle. And I would be surprised if we bite off another big chunk of higher this week in your fat cattle market, because they bought so many cattle last week and probably got their runs lined up for kill here for a while. Even though the market ready supplies are getting smaller, they'll be trying to jump out there and buy more cattle with days on them or further days out, like a month or so here in this week or next. But I'm not seeing another big bite this week, but it's sure going to be stronger, maybe a buck or 2 or 3. But we don't normally see just week after week of these big jumps in your fat cattle market. We do on your feeders when things finally turn around and get positive, because we've had a lot of cattle feeders been sitting back waiting to buy to see when the bottom was. We've had a lot of sellers sitting back and waiting to sell those cattle on those real high quality bunches. So you're going to see that. And then the feeder cattle, there's just so much more emotion involved in it, especially in your cattle auction, sitting across from another guy and really getting your emotions. You don't see that in your fat cattle, because basically you're just dealing with a handful of packers, and they really got to have a heart before they can show any emotion or feelings. So you're not going to see that. Yeah, we saw a big jump, nearly $5 on the weighted average last week, but that wasn't because they got excited. That was because they just absolutely had to have those cattle. And we talked there in the last week or so how they really needed those cattle, and for these cattle feeders to quit selling themselves short and feeling like they were the ones that were in a bind. But you look at your cash feeders this week, starting out, Oklahoma City had 7,200 head on Monday. Feeders $3 to $6 higher. Calves $3 to $8 higher. We've been waiting for these calves to take off. I think a lot of that $3 to $8 higher is because we had more local calves selling for the last several weeks, and really for the last few months. Seeing a lot of shipped in type cattle, and not necessarily shipped in by shippers, bought 1 or 2 at a time, but cattle, and they could have been home raised cattle, but they were from further away, and not true Okies there, and not any one colored, one brand home raised kind of cattle. But to had a lot of those this week, and I think that influenced your market probably as much as anything. And And I know the fat cattle market is boosted and given these feeder cattle a charge, but I think we've had several things happen. We've seen our harvest is starting to wind down now. We've got a lot of guys that are finished up with the corn and just trying to get done with beans, or they've moved to beans and they just got a patch or two of corn to do that it's not going to take a whole lot of time to do, and that's a big jolt. We're starting to see the weather finally break. I mean, down here in the southern plains and really as far up, you know, in above I-70 there, we've been seeing these hot daytime temperatures, you know, up in the 80s and places like that. Down here around Amarillo, it's been, you know, 85 to 90 in the daytime. It's cold in the mornings, it gets cold at night. Hard to straighten cattle up and just not a whole lot of fun to be in. But we're finally starting to see that weather break and become more consistently cooler. And that helps as much as anything when you get ready to buy some calves. And guys, like I said earlier, guys have been putting off buying calves and guys have been putting off selling them. And now we're getting in here ready to do something. Joplin had 3,600 head on Monday there, steady to $4 higher for the most part. It was called. Some steer calves $4 to $8 higher, but I'm going to make a prediction here, and not that I want it to happen. It's just something I see coming down the road, and I think you ought to be looking for it. You've got a lot of calves to sell. I've talked about this before, but this calf run is going to bog down here. We're way behind on selling our calves. We've got some big runs of calves to sell. A lot of them are going to be showing up at your local auction, especially in the northern plains. On top of that, we've got a lot of private treaty calves that have been sold, and a lot of video cattle are going to be shipped over the next month, 6 weeks. Well, we're going to have a problem getting all those cattle shoved into a funnel here. We've got a lot of cattle that's got to move. We're not going to have enough trucks to move them. You get to having runs, some big runs in your northern plains auctions, 8,000, 10,000 head or more. That's a lot of calves to move. They're all pretty much going into the same channels. And whenever those feedlots and big growing yards are taking delivery on a lot of your video cattle, a lot of your private treaty cattle, they just don't have enough end pins coming in, and they don't have enough ability to process all those calves coming in, and it's going to back up your demand a little bit for these calves. Where calves are going to be sitting around these sale barns waiting on a truck, and going to get bogged down. We're not going to be able to get them all moved. So we're seeing these guys this week jumping out there. They're seeing these big fancy calves. A lot more of them are weaned now than they've been, which they want to see that. And they're wanting to get in on those calves, and you've got your farmer feeders coming in. We're seeing a big jump in the market, but here in the next 2 or 3 weeks or 4, all these holes are going to start getting plugged up, and things are going to get backed up, and guys are going to be cussing the truckers, and they can't get them out, and this and that, and it's going to bog things down. It normally does in October, but everything's been moved back a few weeks this time because the market was so tough and we felt like it had bottomed out, and so it's going to move a little bit later into all of November this year. But you look at a big sale on Cattle Market Central there, Phillips, South Dakota. This is about the 5th or 6th week in a row or more they've had over 10,000 head of cattle. Just huge runs, and that is a top quality sale there. You can watch it each Tuesday on dvauction.com and get on there and sign up to bid if you want to. But Phillips, South Dakota, another big run this Tuesday, selling most of the calf, and that's what they're primarily selling right now is calves. There's no true yearlings left in the northern plains. And so selling a lot of calves, and your popular calf weights where your big runs are at, selling mostly firm to $5 higher. But some of your pee-wee calves, those 3 and 4 weight calves, you can't get a lot of numbers of them, but where you see those as much as $10 higher. But things have really turned around this week, and looks like we are going to see proof that this market has finally bottomed out here a couple weeks ago, and we are on the rebound. That's 3 minutes. We'll talk to you on Friday.